for generations. The dominant story of North America has rested on a powerful illusion that when Europeans arrived, they encountered a vast, undeveloped wilderness occupied only by small, nomadic groups. This idea did not emerge accidentally. It was carefully constructed to justify conquest, settlement, and ownership. If the land was empty or used inefficiently, then taking it could be framed as progress rather than invasion. This myth, often referred to as terra nullius, became the moral foundation of colonization. Yet early European explorers told a very different story. Spanish, French, and English accounts described extensive farmlands, large towns, wide road systems, and dense populations stretching along rivers and valleys. Hernando de Soto's expedition through the Mississippi Valley encountered organized societies with leaders, storehouses of food, and complex social structures. These reports contradicted the later narrative, so they were gradually dismissed or forgotten. Over time, the absence of visible cities was used as evidence that none had existed. What was ignored was the catastrophic population collapse caused by disease. Smallpox, measles, and influenza spread faster than Europeans themselves, wiping out millions before sustained contact occurred. Entire regions were depopulated. Cities were abandoned, forests reclaimed farmland. When settlers arrived generations later, they mistook the aftermath of disaster for proof of primitivism. This misunderstanding became policy. School textbooks simplified history. Museums minimized indigenous achievements. The image of an untouched wilderness became central to national identity. Acknowledging advanced civilizations would have forced uncomfortable questions. Who truly owned the land? Who had the right to rule it? And what moral cost was paid to build modern nations? By framing North America as empty, history erased the people who shaped it. This erasure was not just about the past, it was about power in the present. And once a myth becomes foundational, challenging it threatens everything built upon it. Around the year 1200, while medieval Europe struggled with famine and overcrowding, a vast city thrived near the Mississippi River, known today as Cahokia. This urban center covered more land than London at its peak and housed tens of thousands of people. At its heart stood Monk's Mound, a massive earthen pyramid larger in base than Egypt's Great Pyramid. This was not a village, it was a planned metropolis. Cahokia featured residential districts, ceremonial plazas, defensive walls, and astronomical alignments. Its leaders coordinated labor on a massive scale, moving millions of tons of earth without metal tools or draft animals. Food production was so efficient that it sustained dense populations for centuries. Trade networks stretched hundreds of miles, bringing copper, shells, and stone from distant regions. Despite this, Cahokia rarely appears in world history discussions. It is not taught alongside Rome, Angkor, or Teotihuacan. Why? Because Cahokia does not fit the idea that complex civilization belongs only to the old world. Recognizing it forces a reevaluation of what advanced truly means. The city's decline around the 1300s remains debated. Environmental strain, political conflict, climate shifts, but its disappearance made it easier to forget. When Europeans arrived centuries later, Cahokia was already abandoned. The earthworks were assumed to be natural hills or the work of a mysterious vanished race. By failing to place Cahokia where it belongs in global history, its legacy was diminished. Yet, its scale and sophistication prove that North America produced urban civilizations every bit as complex as those across the oceans. Across the eastern United States lie tens of thousands of earthen mounds, burial mounds, temple mounds, and geometric earthworks aligned with the sun and stars. These structures were built over thousands of years by multiple cultures, including the Edina, Hopewell, and Mississippian peoples. Their precision and scale astonished early settlers. But instead of crediting indigenous peoples, many Americans invented alternative explanations. A racist belief took hold. Native Americans were incapable of such achievements. The mounds were attributed to lost Israelites, ancient Europeans, or mythical white civilizations. This fiction allowed settlers to admire the structures without acknowledging the people they displaced. In the 19th century, the Smithsonian Institution eventually confirmed that indigenous peoples built the mounds, but the damage was already done. Many sites were destroyed for farmland, railroads, and cities. Artifacts were removed without consent. Entire landscapes were erased. This was not just ignorance, it was ideological. Admitting indigenous authorship challenged assumptions of superiority and entitlement. So history was reshaped to preserve comfort rather than truth. Today, the mounds remain one of the clearest symbols of a suppressed past, visible, undeniable, yet still misunderstood. Ancient North American civilizations possessed deep scientific knowledge rooted in observation and experience. Many sites were aligned precisely with solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles. Structures like Woodhenge near Cahokia functioned as massive solar calendars, rivaling Stonehenge in accuracy. Agriculture was equally advanced. Indigenous farmers engineered soil, rotated crops, and developed sustainable systems like the Three Sisters corn, beans, and squash that enriched the land rather than exhausting it. These methods fed large populations without ecological collapse for centuries. Trade routes connected the continent. Obsidian from the Rockies, shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes all moved across vast distances. This required organization, diplomacy, and infrastructure. Western history often equates science with written records, dismissing oral knowledge as inferior. But complexity does not require parchment. It requires understanding, and North America had it in abundance. One of the greatest misconceptions about indigenous societies is that they faded because they were weak or backward. In reality, they were devastated by invisible enemies. Old World diseases reduced populations by as much as 90% in some regions. Entire civilizations collapsed before direct contact. This catastrophe rewrote history. When Europeans arrived later, they saw emptiness where cities once stood. They mistook tragedy for absence. The survivors, traumatized and fragmented, were judged as remnants of something that never existed. Disease accomplished what warfare could not. It cleared land, erased memory, and made conquest easier to justify. Understanding this changes everything. Why does this history still matter? Because land rights, sovereignty, and national identity are tied to the past. Recognizing ancient civilizations strengthens indigenous claims and complicates modern borders. Governments built on simplified origin stories resist complexity. Acknowledging deep indigenous history raises questions about ownership, justice, and reparations. Silence becomes policy. History is not just about what happened, it is about who benefits from how it is told. Archaeology is not neutral. Funding, careers, and institutions shape what is studied and what is ignored. Discoveries that challenge dominant narratives often face resistance, ridicule, or neglect. Sites remain unexcavated. Evidence sits in storage. Popular media focuses elsewhere. Control over history is control over meaning. But cracks are forming. LiDAR technology is revealing lost cities beneath forests. Indigenous scholars are reclaiming their histories. Oral traditions are being validated by science. The story of ancient North America is re-emerging, not as myth, but as fact. These civilizations were not lost because they failed. They were forgotten because remembering them was inconvenient. History is being rewritten, and this time the land is speaking back.